It's funny how life works sometimes. You think everything is going perfectly fine, and then out of nowhere, reality flips upside down. That's exactly what happened to humanity, not just one person or one country, but the entire planet. For years, Earth had been riding high on its own success. Technology was booming and people were more connected than ever before. Smartphones, self-driving cars, space travel, it seemed like there wasn't anything humans couldn't do. Wars between nations had become rare because everyone realized that peace made more sense than destruction. Even the environment, though still struggling in some places, was starting to show signs of recovery thanks to new inventions and global cooperation. At the center of all this progress stood something called the Global Accord. It was basically a big council made up of leaders from every corner of the world. These weren't politicians arguing over small things. They were visionaries trying to solve the biggest problems facing humanity: climate change, poverty, inequality. People trusted them to keep things running smoothly. But here's the thing about trust. It can make you blind to danger. And no one saw what was coming next. Dr. Elena Voss was one of those trusted leaders. She wasn't your typical scientist stuck in a lab coat. Sure, she spent most of her days staring at stars through telescopes, but she also cared deeply about the future of humankind. Her job? To study the skies and look for anything unusual. Asteroids, comets, weird signals, you name it. Most of the time, her work involved sitting alone in dimly lit rooms, surrounded by blinking monitors and endless streams of data. Boring, right? Well, not this time. One evening, while working late at the Lunar Observatory, a fancy name for a telescope base on the moon, Elena noticed something strange. At first, it looked like static on the screen, the kind of interference you might get from solar flares or equipment glitches. But when she zoomed in closer, her heart skipped a beat. There, near Jupiter, was a cluster of objects moving toward Earth at an incredible speed. They weren't natural. This wasn't an asteroid or a comet. These were ships, massive alien ships. Elena froze. For a moment, she thought she must have made a mistake. Maybe the computer messed up the readings. Maybe she'd misinterpreted the data. But deep down, she knew better. Something or someone was heading straight for Earth. Her hands trembled as she recorded the coordinates and sent an urgent message back to headquarters. Within hours, news of the discovery spread like wildfire among the scientific community. Panic rippled through research labs around the globe. Everyone wanted answers, but no one had any. Not yet. The High Council reacted quickly, calling an emergency meeting to discuss the situation. Some members dismissed the sighting as nothing serious. It's probably just a glitch, one of them said confidently. Others suggested it could be a rogue comet or maybe even a secret military experiment gone wrong. But Elena wasn't buying it. She'd seen enough to know this was different. As the days passed, the mysterious fleet grew closer. Telescopes captured clearer images revealing sleek, metallic vessels unlike anything humanity had ever built. Each ship shimmered with an otherworldly glow, almost like they were alive. Scientists tried to calculate their size, but the numbers didn't add up. If these ships were real, they were bigger than entire cities. Finally, the aliens broke there. Silence. One day, without warning, every TV, radio, and phone on Earth buzzed to life with a single transmission. The message came in a language no one understood, at first. It sounded like a mix of clicks, hums, and tones, completely foreign to human ears. Linguists scrambled to decode it, feeding the audio into supercomputers designed to translate ancient texts. After hours of intense effort, the translation popped up on screens worldwide. 2 words written in bold letters. Prepare yourselves. That's when chaos erupted. Streets filled with people shouting, crying, praying. Social media exploded, with theories ranging from invasion plots to divine judgment. Governments issued statements urging calm, but no one listened. How could they? Humanity had always wondered if we were alone in the universe, and now, suddenly, we had our answer. And it wasn't friendly. Back at the observatory, Elena worked tirelessly alongside her team, trying to figure out what the aliens wanted. Why were they coming? What did they mean by prepare? Every theory led to more questions. Were they hostile? Peaceful? Just curious tourists stopping by for a visit? Despite the uncertainty, one thing became painfully clear. Earth wasn't ready. All the technological advancements, all the political unity, it meant nothing compared to whatever force was approaching. Humanity had placed too much faith in its ability to handle anything. Now, faced with the unknown, that confidence crumbled like sandcastles washed away by the tide. The High Council held another meeting, this time inviting top scientists, military leaders, and philosophers to brainstorm solutions. Some suggested launching missiles to intercept the fleet. Others proposed sending a diplomatic envoy to meet them peacefully. But none of these ideas felt solid. No one knew what the aliens were capable of, let alone how to communicate with them effectively. In desperation, the council turned to Elena as the person who discovered the fleet. They hoped she might have insights others lacked. When asked what she thought should be done, she paused for a long moment before answering. "We need to listen," she said finally. "Whatever they want, we won't survive if we fight blindly. Our best chance is to understand them." Her words resonated with many, but fear still clouded judgment. People demanded action, any action, even if it meant risking war. Meanwhile, the clock kept ticking. Day by day, hour by hour, the alien fleet drew nearer, casting longer shadows across humanity's fragile sense of security. No one slept well during those nights. Families huddled together, clutching each other tightly. Friends exchanged tearful goodbyes, unsure if they'd see each other again. Churches, mosques, temples all overflowed with crowds seeking solace in prayer. Even atheists found themselves gazing skyward, hoping against hope that somehow this nightmare would end. And yet, amidst the terror, there was also curiosity. Strangers struck up conversations in grocery stores, sharing theories and fears. Artists painted murals depicting the alien ships, capturing both awe and dread. Musicians composed haunting melodies inspired by the looming threat. Humanity, for all its flaws, refused to give up entirely. Hope lingered, fragile but persistent. As the final days before arrival slipped away, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that history itself hung in the balance. Whatever happened next would define not just her generation, but generations to come. Would humanity rise to the occasion, proving itself worthy of survival? Or would it crumble under pressure, reduced to ashes? Only time would tell. The day humanity had been dreading finally arrived. It wasn't marked by explosions or fiery destruction, at least not yet. Instead, it began with an eerie silence, a stillness so profound that even the birds seemed to stop chirping. People woke up to find the sky darker than usual, as if a storm cloud had swallowed the sun. But this wasn't weather. This was something far beyond anything anyone had ever seen. At first, people thought it was just their imagination. Maybe the stress of waiting for the aliens had gotten to them. But then they looked up, and there it was, the fleet. Dozens of massive ships, each one glowing faintly like giant lanterns in the sky, hovered above Earth. They weren't landing or attacking. They were simply there, looming over cities, oceans, and mountains like gods surveying their creation. The sheer size of the vessels made skyscrapers look like toys in comparison. Entire neighborhoods disappeared beneath their shadows, leaving people feeling small, insignificant, and utterly powerless. Panic spread faster than wildfire. Streets flooded with terrified crowds running in every direction, unsure where to go or what to do. Parents clutched their children tightly, whispering prayers under their breath. Shopkeepers abandoned their stores, leaving doors wide open as chaos took hold. Phones lit up with frantic calls and messages, but no one had answers. Social media buzzed with videos of the ships, blurry footage captured by shaky hands. Every post carried the same question: what do they want? Amidst the hysteria, governments tried to maintain order. Emergency broadcasts urged people to stay calm and remain indoors, but those words felt hollow. How could anyone stay calm when the end of the world, or at least life as they knew it, seemed imminent? Military jets scrambled into the air, circling the alien ships cautiously. Some nations even fired warning shots, hoping to provoke a reaction, but the fleet didn't flinch. Not a single ship moved or retaliated. It was as if the aliens didn't even notice. Then, without warning, the aliens spoke. It started as a low vibrating through the ground and echoing in people's chests. At first, no one understood what it was. Was it some kind of weapon? A signal? But soon, the sound grew louder, clearer, until it resolved into a voice. A deep, resonant voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. It filled living rooms, classrooms, and public squares, impossible to ignore. Every language on Earth translated simultaneously, as though the aliens had tapped directly into human minds. Attention, inhabitants of this planet. The voice boomed. We are the virus. Your existence has been assessed and your future is uncertain. Prepare yourselves. That was it. No explanation, no demands, no threats, just those few chilling words. And then silence again. For a moment, the world stood still. People stared at each other, wide-eyed, trying to process what they'd just heard. Who or what were the virus? Why had they come? What did they mean by, your future is uncertain? The questions swirled endlessly, but there were no answers. Just fear, pure, unrelenting fear. Back at the Global Accord headquarters, the High Council convened in a state of near panic. Normally composed leaders now paced nervously, their faces pale with dread. They argued fiercely about what to do next. Should they retaliate, surrender, try to communicate further? Each option came with risks, none of them good. Finally, someone suggested reaching out directly to the aliens, hoping to establish dialogue. Before things escalated, a team of scientists and diplomats worked tirelessly to craft a message. It wasn't easy. How do you speak to beings who may not think or feel the way you do? What words could possibly convey humanity's desperation? Without sounding weak? After hours of debate, they settled on a simple plea. We are peaceful. Please tell us why you are here. They broadcast the message using every frequency available, aiming it toward the largest ship in the fleet. For hours, there was no response. Just the same oppressive silence hanging over the planet like a shroud. Then, just as hope began to fade, the aliens answered. This time, instead of a disembodied voice, a holographic figure appeared in major cities around the world. In New York, Tokyo, London, Cape Town, it didn't matter where you lived. Everyone saw him or it. The being introduced itself as Kelthan, the leader of the virus. Its form was unlike anything humans had ever encountered. It looked like liquid light trapped inside a crystalline shell, constantly shifting and shimmering. Eyes couldn't focus on it for long without feeling dizzy. Around its body pulsed waves of energy, giving off a faint hum that sent shivers down spines. Kelthan wasted no time with pleasantries. Your species has reached a critical juncture, it declared, its tone cold and clinical. You possess intelligence but lack wisdom. You have destroyed much of your own world in pursuit of fleeting pleasures. Now you must prove your worth. Prove their worth? The phrase echoed in stunned silence. What did that even mean? Before anyone could ask, Kelthan continued. Answer me this. What value does your species bring to existence? If you cannot provide a satisfactory answer within 7 solar cycles, your fate will be decided. And just like that, the hologram vanished, leaving behind a palpable sense of dread. 7 solar cycles that gave humanity less than a week to save itself. Less than a week to justify its very existence. News of Kelthan's ultimatum spread instantly, sparking debates across the globe. Some saw it as a chance to reflect on humanity's flaws and redeem itself. Others viewed it as a death sentence, believing the aliens had already made up their minds. Riots broke out in several cities as anger boiled over. Protesters chanted slogans like, "We deserve to live," and "Why should we beg for mercy?" Meanwhile, religious groups gathered in prayer, asking for divine intervention. Scientists pored over data, searching for clues about the virus's origins and motives. Philosophers debated endlessly about how to define humanity's value. Everyone had an opinion, but no one had a solution. The High Council called another emergency meeting, this time inviting representatives from every field imaginable scientists. Artists, historians, ethicists, spiritual leaders, their goal was to assemble a diverse team capable of crafting a response that represented all of humanity. But agreeing on anything proved nearly impossible. Arguments erupted constantly, with each group insisting their perspective was the most important. Engineers argued that humanity's technological achievements should be highlighted. Space exploration, medical breakthroughs, renewable energy. Artists countered that creativity was what truly set humans apart, citing masterpieces of music, literature, and art. Spiritual leaders emphasized compassion and morality, pointing to acts of kindness and selflessness throughout history. Meanwhile, skeptics warned against presenting only the positives, arguing that honesty might resonate more deeply with the aliens. As the days passed, tensions mounted. Tempers flared and alliances shifted. Some members of the council privately considered giving up altogether, convinced that resistance was futile. Others begged for mercy, offering Earth's resources as tribute in exchange for leniency. But Kelthon showed no interest in wealth or power. His focus remained solely on the question he'd posed: what value did humanity bring? Desperation set in as the deadline loomed closer. Sleep became a luxury few could afford. Cafeteria tables turned into makeshift war rooms, covered in scribbled notes and half-finished ideas. Frustration bubbled over into shouting matches, followed by awkward silences as everyone remembered the stakes. Failure wasn't an option, not when billions of lives hung in the balance. One night, as the clock ticked down to the final solar cycle, Dr. Elena Voss sat alone in her office, staring blankly at a wall covered in sticky notes. Her mind raced, with possibilities, none of them satisfying. She replayed Kelthon's words over and over in her head, searching for hidden meaning. He hadn't asked for perfection or greatness. He'd simply asked for value. That had to mean something. Suddenly, an idea struck her. It wasn't polished or rehearsed, but it felt real, raw, human. She grabbed her notebook and began sketching out a plan, her heart pounding with a mix of excitement and terror. This wasn't about impressing the aliens or proving superiority. It was about showing them who humanity really was, flaws and all. When she presented her idea to the council the next morning, skepticism greeted her. Some dismissed it as too risky, others as naive. But Elena stood firm, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. If we try to hide our mistakes or pretend we're something we're not, they'll see right through us, she said. Let's show them everything, the good, the bad, the ugly. Let's show them that we're still learning, still growing. Maybe that's enough. Her words hung in the air, heavy with possibility. Slowly, reluctantly, the council agreed. There was nothing left to lose. As preparations began, people around the world held their breath. Billions tuned in to watch as humanity prepared to face judgment. Would their honesty resonate with the virus, or would it seal their doom? Only time would tell. The clock was ticking. 7 solar cycles had felt like an eternity when they first heard Kelthon's ultimatum. But now, with only hours left, time seemed to vanish faster than anyone could keep up with. The weight of the situation pressed down on every member of the council, and not just them. Across the globe, people were holding their breath, glued to screens, waiting for what might come next. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about identity. Who were humans, really? What made them worth saving? These weren't easy questions to answer, especially when the stakes were so high. Dr. Elena Voss stood at the center of it all. She hadn't slept in days, her mind racing between bursts of inspiration and moments of sheer panic. Her idea, to show the aliens raw, unfiltered footage of humanity's struggles, had been met with mixed reactions. Some thought it was brilliant, others reckless. But one thing was clear: there was no turning back now. The team she led had spent countless hours gathering videos, images, and audio recordings that captured the essence of human life. They didn't shy away from anything, not the wars, not the suffering, not the mistakes. But they also included moments of beauty: a child laughing, a couple embracing, a musician playing a soulful melody. Every piece of content told a story, painting a picture. Of a species that was messy, flawed, and yet somehow hopeful. Still, doubts lingered. What if the aliens saw humanity's imperfections as weaknesses? What if honesty wasn't enough? These thoughts gnawed at Elena as she paced the room, watching her team put the final touches on their presentation. Screens flickered with clips of protests, natural disasters, acts of kindness, scientific breakthroughs, and art created under impossible circumstances. It was overwhelming, even for those putting it together. One young technician wiped away tears after watching a video of a community coming together to rebuild after a hurricane. Another stared blankly at a clip of soldiers marching into battle, his hands trembling slightly. No one spoke much. There was nothing left to say. Side, the world waited anxiously. Cities fell eerily silent as people gathered around televisions, phones and radios, bracing themselves for whatever came next. In some places, crowds formed spontaneously in public squares, united by a shared sense of dread and determination. Strangers hugged each other, whispered prayers, or simply sat side by side in silence. Even the skeptics, the ones who had mocked the idea of aliens or dismissed the threat as overblown, couldn't deny the gravity of the moment. This wasn't just about governments or leaders anymore. It was about everyone. Meanwhile, the virus continued their mysterious activities. Their ships remained stationary above Earth, casting long shadows over entire continents. Occasionally, strange phenomena occurred. Forests would suddenly burn without fire. Oceans froze momentarily before thawing, and buildings disappeared only to reappear seconds later intact. Scientists scrambled to understand what was happening, but no explanation made sense. It was as though the virus were testing Earth itself, probing its limits and vulnerabilities. Were they judging the planet alongside its inhabitants? Or was this something else entirely? Back at the council headquarters, tensions reached a breaking point. Arguments broke out constantly, voices rising in frustration and fear. Some members wanted to include more optimistic material in the presentation, focusing on humanity's achievements rather than its failures. Others insisted on doubling down on honesty, arguing that glossing over the truth would only make things worse. "We can't sugarcoat this," Elena said firmly during one heated exchange. "They already know we're flawed. If we try to hide it, they'll see right through us." Her words silenced the room, though not everyone agreed. A few walked out in protest, convinced the approach was doomed to fail. But most stayed, driven by a mix of desperation and hope. They knew they were gambling everything on this one chance, and failure wasn't an option. As the deadline approached, the team worked tirelessly to refine the presentation. Each clip was carefully chosen, each transition smoothed out to create a cohesive narrative. Music swelled behind certain scenes, adding emotional depth. Narration was kept minimal, letting the visuals speak for themselves. By the end, the project felt less like a formal argument and more like a heartfelt confession, a plea for understanding rather than mercy. Finally, the moment arrived. Representatives from every nation gathered in New York City, where the presentation would take place. The location had been transformed into a surreal arena, surrounded by hovering virus ships that glowed ominously against the darkened sky. Giant screens displayed the alien fleet overhead, a constant reminder of the power imbalance. Billions watched live broadcasts, their eyes glued to the screen as the representatives took their positions. Elena stepped forward, her heart pounding in her chest. She wasn't used to being in the spotlight, but she knew she couldn't let fear stop her. Taking a deep breath, she began to speak. Her voice trembled at first, but as she continued, it grew stronger, steadier. "We are not perfect," she admitted, addressing both the aliens and the billions watching. "We destroy, we hurt, we fail. But we also dream, create, and heal. We are a work in progress, forever striving to be better." Behind her, the screens lit up with the footage the team had prepared. Scenes of devastation gave way to moments of resilience. Footage of war zones transitioned seamlessly into clips of aid workers distributing supplies. Images of pollution-choked rivers faded into shots of volunteers cleaning beaches. The contrast was stark, almost jarring, but it worked. It showed humanity not as a static entity, but as a dynamic force capable of change, even if that change came slowly and painfully. As the presentation unfolded, the atmosphere shifted. At first, the crowd was tense, unsure how the aliens would react, but as the clips played, something remarkable happened. People began to cry not out of sadness, but out of recognition. For the first time, many saw their species for what it truly was: imperfect, yes, but also resilient and full of potential. Even the hardened politicians and scientists in attendance found themselves moved. It was as though the act of bearing witness to humanity's complexity brought a strange kind of clarity. When the final clip ended, Elena turned back to face the holographic projection of Kelvin, who had appeared silently during the presentation. His crystalline form shimmered faintly, unreadable as ever. For a long moment he said nothing, simply observing. Then, in his deep, resonant voice, he spoke. "You cling to life despite knowing death is inevitable. You create beauty though you cannot guarantee its permanence. Perhaps you deserve another chance." The relief that washed over the crowd was palpable. Cheers erupted, tears flowed freely, and strangers embraced each other in celebration. But Kelvin wasn't finished. "However," he continued, his tone hardening slightly, "your existence will come with conditions. We will remain as overseers, guiding your species towards sustainability and ethical evolution. Any deviation will result in immediate annihilation." The cheers died down quickly, replaced by murmurs of unease. Oversight? Was this salvation or servitude? Elena felt a knot tighten in her stomach. Had they traded one form of destruction for another? Still, she forced herself to nod, accepting the terms. There was no room for negotiation here. Humanity had been given a lifeline, however fragile, and they had to take it. As the meeting concluded, Elena stepped aside, allowing the representatives to begin discussing the implications of Kelvin's decree. But her mind was elsewhere. Something about the aliens' behavior didn't sit right with her. Why had they come here in the first place? What did they stand to gain by helping or controlling humanity? And why had Kelvin emphasized sustainability and ethics so strongly? These questions gnawed at her as she retreated to a quiet corner, staring up at the glowing ships above. She didn't have answers yet, but she knew one thing for certain: humanity's journey was far from over. Whatever lay ahead, it would test them in ways they couldn't imagine. But maybe, just maybe, they were ready to face it together. The air was thick with tension as the representatives from every nation stood in the transformed arena of New York City. Giant screens displayed the towering virus ships above, casting an ominous glow over the proceedings. Billions of eyes were glued to their devices, watching live broadcasts, hearts pounding collectively as humanity awaited its verdict. The alien leader, Kelvin, loomed large in his holographic form, shimmering like a prism caught in sunlight. His presence commanded silence, and even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Elena stepped forward, her legs trembling slightly, but her resolve unwavering. Behind her, the massive screens flickered to life, showcasing the raw footage of humanity's story, the highs, the lows, the triumphs, and the tragedies. It wasn't polished or rehearsed. It was real. As the clips played, Elena spoke softly at first, her voice echoing through the arena and into living rooms around the world. "We are not perfect," she began, her words simple yet heavy with meaning. "We destroy forests, pollute oceans, wage wars that leave scars on generations. We hurt each other, sometimes out of ignorance, sometimes out of fear. But we also build bridges, literal ones and metaphorical ones. We create art that moves souls, music that heals wounds, science that pushes boundaries. We dream of better tomorrows, even when today feels unbearable." Her voice grew stronger as she continued, fueled by both desperation and hope. "Look at us. Look at what we've done wrong, but also look at what we've tried to fix. Look at how we come together after disasters, how strangers become family in moments of need. Look at our children, who still laugh despite everything. Isn't that worth something?" The footage behind her shifted seamlessly, showing scenes of devastation followed by resilience. A wildfire reduced acres of forest to ash, only for volunteers to replant saplings months later. Refugees fleeing conflict found shelter in communities that opened their doors without hesitation. Scientists worked tirelessly in labs to cure diseases, while artists painted murals celebrating unity. Humanity's contradictions were laid bare, its capacity for destruction matched only by its determination to rebuild. As the presentation unfolded, something extraordinary happened. People watching from crowded squares to quiet homes felt a strange mix of emotions. Some cried, overwhelmed by the weight of seeing their collective flaws and strengths displayed so openly. Others felt pride, realizing for the first time just how far humanity had come despite its imperfections. Even the hardened politicians and military leaders gathered in the arena couldn't help but feel moved. For those few minutes, humanity didn't seem divided by borders, languages, or ideologies. It felt united not because they wanted to win favor with the aliens, but because they finally saw themselves clearly. When the final clip ended, a child planting a single flower in barren soil, the crowd erupted into applause. It wasn't planned, but it felt instinctive, as if everyone needed to release the pent-up emotion building inside them. Elena turned back toward Kelvin, her heart hammering in her chest. She didn't know what to expect. Would this be enough? Or would the aliens see humanity's honesty as weakness? Kelvin didn't respond immediately. He simply stood there, his crystalline form pulsating faintly, as though he were processing everything he'd seen and heard. The silence stretched endlessly, each second feeling like an eternity. Elena clenched her fists, resisting the urge to fidget. Around her, the representatives exchanged nervous glances, some whispering prayers under their breath. Finally, Kelvin spoke. His voice resonated deeply, cutting through the tension like a blade. You cling to life despite knowing death is inevitable. You create beauty, though you cannot guarantee its permanence. Perhaps you deserve another chance. A wave of relief swept through the arena. Cheers erupted, tears flowed freely, and people hugged one another tightly. On screens across the globe, viewers reacted similarly, some sobbing with joy, others shouting in celebration. For a brief moment, it felt like humanity had won. But Kelvin wasn't finished. However, he continued, his tone shifting ever so slightly, your existence will come with conditions. We will remain as overseers, guiding your species toward sustainability and ethical evolution. Any deviation will result in immediate annihilation. The cheers died down almost instantly, replaced by murmurs of unease. What did oversight mean exactly? Would humanity lose its freedom? Would decisions about Earth's future now rest in the hands of these enigmatic beings? Questions flooded everyone's minds, but no one dared ask aloud. Instead, they listened intently as Kelvin outlined the terms. He explained that the virus would dismantle industries harming the planet, factories spewing toxic fumes, corporations exploiting natural resources, practices driving ecosystems to collapse. They would enforce strict population control measures to ensure Earth could sustain itself long-term. Humans would be required to adopt technologies provided by the virus, designed to reduce waste and promote harmony with nature. Resistance would not be tolerated. For many, this revelation was bittersweet. Yes, humanity had been spared, but at what cost? Were they trading extinction for servitude? Elena felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on her shoulders. She had led the effort to present humanity's case honestly, believing it was the right thing to do. Now, faced with the consequences, she wondered if survival under such terms was truly worth it. As the meeting concluded, representatives from various nations huddled together, discussing strategies to navigate this new reality. Some argued for compliance, insisting that working with the virus was the only way forward. Others whispered about rebellion, unwilling to accept oversight from an alien force. Tensions simmered beneath the surface, threatening to boil over. Elena retreated to a quiet corner, exhausted but unable to rest. Her mind raced with thoughts about what came next. The virus's arrival had changed everything, but their motivations remained unclear. Why had they come here? Was this truly about saving Earth, or was there something more? And why had Kelvin emphasize sustainability and ethics so strongly? Her questions deepened when she noticed subtle changes in the aliens' behavior. The mysterious phenomena they had observed earlier, forests burning without fire, oceans freezing momentarily, seemed less random now. It was as though the Virith weren't merely testing humanity. They were studying Earth itself, probing its limits and vulnerabilities. Could it be that the aliens viewed the planet as more than just a home for humans? What if Earth held value beyond its inhabitants? Late that night, as most of the world celebrated narrowly avoiding doom, Elena received an unexpected visit. To her shock, Kelthon appeared before her not as a hologram, but physically present, his crystalline form glowing faintly in the dim light. She froze, unsure whether to feel awe or terror. "You intrigue me," he said, his voice softer than before. "Your species clings to hope even when logic dictates despair. That is rare." Elena swallowed hard, forcing herself to speak. "Why? Are you really here?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Is this about us, or about Earth?" Kelthon paused, as if considering his response. When he finally spoke, his words sent chills down her spine. "Both and neither. Your kind may have drawn our attention, but our purpose extends beyond judgment. We fled our own dying galaxy, seeking refuge. This planet offers possibilities for you and for us." Elena's mind reeled. The Virith weren't conquerors or saviors. They were refugees, just like humanity in many ways. Their arrival wasn't punishment, it was necessity. And now, Earth was caught in the middle of their struggle for survival. "I understand why you might fear us," Kelthon added, his tone almost apologetic. "But coexistence is possible if you choose to embrace it." With that, he vanished, leaving Elena alone with her thoughts. The implications of his words weighed heavily on her. Humanity had survived, for now, but the road ahead would be fraught with challenges. Learning to share their home with the Virith wouldn't be easy. Trust would have to be earned on both sides. As dawn broke over the horizon, Elena stepped outside, gazing up at the alien fleet still hovering above. Despite everything, she felt a flicker of hope. Humanity's journey wasn't over, it was just beginning. And maybe, just maybe, this shared struggle could lead to something greater than anyone imagined. The days that followed Kelthon's revelation were unlike anything humanity had ever experienced. The Virith didn't waste time. Almost immediately, they began implementing changes, sweeping, radical shifts that reshaped the way humans lived, worked, and interacted with their planet. It wasn't subtle or gradual. It was a complete overhaul, as if the aliens had no patience for resistance or debate. Factories that once spewed smoke into the sky were dismantled overnight, replaced by sleek, alien-built structures that hummed with energy-efficient technology. Entire industries collapsed, leaving millions unemployed and scrambling to adapt. Some people protested, but the Virith's omnipotence made opposition feel futile. They weren't here to negotiate, they were here to enforce. At first, the changes felt suffocating. Humans weren't used to being told what to do, especially by outsiders. But over time, the benefits became impossible to ignore. Air quality improved dramatically, skies clearing up in ways people hadn't seen in decades. Rivers that had been choked with pollution ran clean again, teeming with life. Even the weather seemed milder, as though the Virith's interventions had somehow balanced Earth's fragile ecosystems. People started noticing small miracles, a tree sprouting leaves where none had grown before, birds returning to areas long abandoned, fish swimming freely in waters once deadened by human neglect. For all their fears about oversight, there was no denying that the aliens were healing the planet, but healing came at a cost. Population control measures were among the most controversial policies enforced by the Virith. Birth rates were strictly regulated, and families were limited to one child per household. Governments struggled to enforce these rules, facing backlash from communities who saw them as an attack on personal freedom. Protests erupted worldwide, with chants of "We are not numbers" echoing through city streets. Yet, despite the anger, few dared to defy the Virith outright. Stories circulated of those who resisted disappearing without a trace, their fates unknown. Fear kept most in line, even as resentment simmered beneath the surface. Dr. Elena Voss found herself at the center of this new reality. She had become both a symbol of hope and a target of criticism. To some, she was a hero, the woman who saved humanity by showing its raw truth to the aliens. To others, she was a traitor, someone who had unwittingly handed Earth over to an occupying force. The weight of those opinions weighed heavily on her, but she refused to retreat into silence. If humanity was going to survive and thrive under the virus's watchful eyes, it needed leaders willing to bridge the gap between species. Elena threw herself into building that bridge. She worked tirelessly alongside a team of scientists, ethicists, and diplomats to establish lines of communication with the virus. At first, progress was slow. The aliens operated on a level of logic and efficiency that often clashed with human emotion and unpredictability. Meetings were frustrating affairs, filled with misunderstandings and unspoken tensions. But Elena persisted, driven by a growing belief that cooperation was possible if both sides were willing to meet halfway. One breakthrough came when Elena suggested creating cultural exchange programs. Her idea was simple yet bold: expose humans and virus to each other's ways of life. Artists, musicians, and storytellers would share their work with the aliens, while select groups of humans would be allowed to observe how the virus lived aboard their ships. The goal wasn't just education, it was connection. By understanding each other better, maybe trust could grow. To her surprise, Kelthan agreed. He saw value in the proposal, though his reasoning remained cryptic. "Your creativity intrigues us," he said during one meeting. "Perhaps it holds answers we have yet to discover." And so the exchanges began. Musicians played haunting melodies for the crystalline beings, their notes reverberating through the shimmering halls of the alien ships. Painters created masterpieces inspired by the virus's ethereal forms, capturing their light and energy on canvas. In return, humans were invited to witness the inner workings of the fleet cities floating in space, powered by technologies beyond comprehension. These glimpses left many awestruck, sparking debates about whether humanity should embrace such advancements or fear them, but not everyone welcomed the exchanges. Resistance movements gained momentum, fueled by distrust and fear of losing autonomy. Underground networks formed, spreading messages of defiance. Graffiti appeared on walls in major cities, slogans like "Earth belongs to us" scrawled in bold letters. Some extremists went further, sabotaging virus installations in acts of rebellion. Each incident drew swift retaliation, reinforcing the perception of the aliens as cold and unyielding rulers. Amidst the chaos, Elena faced her own internal struggles. She couldn't shake the guilt of having played a role in bringing the virus to power. Late at night, she often wondered if she'd made the right choice. Had she saved humanity or condemned it to a different kind of suffering? These doubts gnawed at her, but they also pushed her to keep fighting for a better future. If humanity couldn't reclaim full control, then at least it could find a way to coexist peacefully. Her efforts paid off in unexpected ways. Over time, cracks began to form in the virus's impenetrable facade. While they remained disciplined and focused, moments of curiosity emerged. One day, during a musical performance aboard a virus ship, one of the crystalline beings mimicked the rhythm of a drumbeat, its light pulsing in sync with the music. Another time, a group of humans noticed a virus lingering near a painting, seemingly fascinated by the swirls of color. These tiny interactions hinted at something profound. Perhaps the aliens weren't as indifferent as they seemed. Perhaps they, too, were searching for meaning in this strange partnership. As months turned into years, Earth transformed in ways no one could have predicted. Cities adapted to the virus standards, blending futuristic designs with elements of nature. Vertical gardens climbed skyscrapers and solar panels glimmered on rooftops. Education systems shifted focus, emphasizing sustainability, empathy, and innovation. Children grew up learning about the virus not as invaders but as partners in humanity's ongoing journey, yet challenges remained. Tensions between humans and the aliens never fully disappeared, lingering like storm clouds on the horizon. Resistance movements continued to operate in secret, their members determined to reclaim Earth's independence. And questions about the virus's true intentions lingered in the back of everyone's minds. Were they truly refugees seeking refuge? Or did they have ulterior motives? For Elena, the answers mattered less than the process of finding them. She knew that humanity's survival depended not on perfection, but on perseverance. Every step forward, no matter how small, was a victory, worth celebrating. Whether it was a child planting a tree, a musician composing a song, or a scientist collaborating with the virus, each act contributed to a shared vision of hope. One evening, as Elena stood on a hill overlooking a bustling city bathed in golden twilight, she felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. The road ahead was uncertain, fraught with obstacles and sacrifices yet to come. But for the first time, she believed that humanity might actually rise to the occasion, not alone, but alongside the very beings who had once judged it. The virus weren't gods or saviors. They were flawed, just like humans navigating a universe far bigger and more complex than either species fully understood. Together they were learning not just about each other, but about themselves. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows. Across the land, Elena smiled faintly. Humanity's story wasn't over. It was just beginning.